Sony president reflects on why Concord failed. Hiroki Totoki discussed what went wrong and how PlayStation can learn from it. So I was debating if I was gonna do a video on this just because I had done I think like one or two videos about Concord like when I first started this channel and kind of just gave a little bit of information as to what happened in regards to them failing after like 9 days, not even 2 weeks of it being released. And it was one of those things where, there was just so much against it, especially you can kind of see it once it was released. And then when more information had come out in regards to it, it didn't help at all, especially because it's a game that you have to pay for in a world of like first person shooters that are usually free to play, especially since the fact that it was so close to Overwatch. But the way that the characters were designed, it was one of those things where it turned a lot of people off, and it was something that a lot of them didn't really want to play. And the fact that this individual, the president of Sony, is coming out and making some of the statements, I don't know. Maybe they are that dumb, but at the same time, I feel like they can't be that stupid in regards to like how this game was gonna do and everything like that. Because there were statements that came out in regards to this game talking about how this was gonna be like the future of gaming and everything like that. But when you got games like, like I said, like Overwatch, that it seemed like this was kind of copying in a sense. It's really weird that they thought that this was gonna be like the future and that things were gonna go in this direction. Especially because like I said, the character designs were just kind of weird for the most part, as far as like them having like overweight characters or just characters that seem like, I'm gonna be honest, like unattractive. Just because it is one of those things, as far as gamers usually go, like they want to see good looking people in games at the end of the day, kind of a thing. So interesting, but we'll go ahead and look at what the individual says here. So look, check out this article. Sony president, COO, and CFO Hiroki Totoki had shared his views on why Concord was a failure. During a Q&A session following his latest financial earnings call, Sony management was asked numerous questions about the live service game, which was shut down 11 days after its launch. Oh, okay, so it was 11 days, not 9, my mistake. So Totoki explained that the company's foray into live service games is still a learning process and that it had to take lessons from what happened with Concord, which is really weird because at this point it's like Sony's been around for so long and I feel like you guys have to have the data and the information to really know what players want. And I feel like this is kind of one of those things like I mentioned kind of in the video I did where I talked about how Sony has been trying to make PC gamers create a PlayStation account. I feel like it's one of those situations where they know what players want, they know what players are asking for, but they're just kind of going in their own direction and kind of going against the grain to try to still push what they want. So it's one of those things in a sense where it's like instead of giving the players what they want, we're going to give them what we feel they need, kind of a thing, even though that the players are kind of showing that it's not what we want, man. Like, just listen to what we're telling you. It's not one of those situations where the customer's always right, but in this regard, we're at least giving you the blueprints of what we want that would work for us in regards to us being able to be the gamers. So again, it's just weird that they're trying so hard to just like push against this type of stuff. So currently, we are still in the process of learning, he said via an interpreter. And basically, with regards to the new IP, of course, you don't know the results until you actually try it. So again, I feel like they should have enough data at this point to know what they can come out with that will be something that's successful versus something that's going to be a failure. So for us, for our reflection, we probably need to have a lot of gates, including user testing or internal evaluation and the timing of such gates. And then we need to bring them forward as we should have done for those gates much earlier than we did. And that's kind of a weird statement right there because I remember one of the things that was mentioned when it came down to like the development of this game and everything like that was the mention that there was what they called toxic positivity, where it was one of those things where a lot of people that were kind of developing the game and in the midst of kind of doing all that type of stuff, if it was mentioned that this game wasn't going to do well and that the direction that they were taking in the higher ups wasn't a good direction and gamers weren't going to like it, it seemed like they were kind of pushed out and kind of shunned for having those types of thoughts and it being kind of one of those things where it was looked at as in a negative light. And that's why they said it was positive, a toxic positivity, because it's something in their minds was like, no, you have to understand that what we're doing is good, and you have to let us know that as well. Otherwise, you're not with us, you're actually against us. Even though I'm sure many people out there that were in the development team that were letting them know, like, this seems like it's probably going to be a failure, we're doing so in regards to like it being something that they wanted to see succeed. But with the higher ups like pushing against that and kind of leaving it in like an echo chamber, it's one of those things where it just eventually this is what's going to happen. You're going to get the game that's going to fail, and then you're going to have individuals like this person that are going to make statements like, "Oh, we didn't see it coming." It's like, "Really?" Cuz I'm pretty sure you guys, there had to have been at least a few people in there that were letting you know that this isn't more than likely going to be a positive thing for gamers that they're going to want to play. So, also, we have solid organization. So, going beyond the boundaries of those organizations in terms of development and also sales, I think we could have been much smoother. And then going forward in our titles and in third party titles, we do have many different windows. And we want to be able to select the right and optimal window so that we can deploy them on our own platforms without cannibalization. So that we can maximize our performance in terms of title launches. That's all I have. So I don't know. That's a weird one, man. So they're kind of it seems like they're kind of blaming it. I don't know if it's like in terms of like the advertisements of it to like kind of push it so that it will get people wanting to play. I think they could have pushed this game as much as they wanted to and it still wouldn't have done well from the way that the gameplay looked, as far as, there being like again games like Overwatch that it would look like it was like heavily taking inspiration from. That game is free to play, and it's something that I remember some players were talking about it, where they said the game wasn't the worst game in the world, but it's just it was very dull. There wasn't anything that really made it pop that made you feel like, all right, I gotta play this game. I gotta check this out and see what it's about. It was just something that was kind of like a just a generic first person shooter. And in today's day and age, when you got, Call of Duty, Overwatch, and then you got games like Fortnite, all of these that are, really, games that people have known that they're gonna go to beforehand, it's something like you gotta give this game something that can really work for them, and it seems like they didn't really do that. Earlier in the call, Sony Senior President for Finances and IR, Sadahiko Hayakawa, so if I pronounced that wrong, I apologize, noted the differences between the success of Helldivers 2 and the failure of Concord. And that's an interesting one right there, because Helldivers 2 was also a failure because of Sony at the end of the day. It was one of those things where they did the whole situation where they made you subscribe to a PlayStation Network, and that killed Helldivers 2. Regardless if you want to agree with it or not, that's what killed it. It was one of those things, the game was doing so well, people were constantly talking about, Super Earth and fighting for democracy and, all that type of stuff. But once that whole controversy had came about, it killed the game. I remember I mentioned before, it had a little bit of a spike after that because they did do some like DLC and everything like that. But for the most part, players just stopped going back to it because I heard that game also was very repetitive, and it was one of those things like after too long, you're just kind of doing the same thing, so you kind of lost interest. So we launched two live service games this year, he explained. Helldivers 2 was a huge hit, while Concord ended up being shut down. We gained a lot of experience and learned a lot from both, which is interesting because I'm curious as to them like really considering the fact that Helldivers 2, it doesn't have nearly as many players. I think it lost like 90% of its original peak player base. So I'm wondering if Sony is looking at that and taking that into consideration, or if they're just looking at it in the sense that like, oh yeah, we did really well when it first launched, so we're just gonna go off of that kind of a thing. We intended to share the lessons learned from our success and failures across our studios, including in the areas of title development management, as well as the process of continuously adding expanded content and scaling the service after its release so as to strengthen our development management system. So, and that's an interesting one right there because I remember it was stated that Concord since it was a game you had to purchase, once you did purchase it, they were planning on releasing DLC and everything like that, but they weren't planning on having it be something that was behind a paywall. Like they wanted to release DLC for it that to be free to play for players. So it's interesting because, Helldivers, they kind of went a different route where you did have to purchase the game, and then I'm pretty sure you had to pay for the DLC as well. I could be wrong because I never played it myself, but that, if I'm not mistaken, that's what I believe was the case. We intended to build an optimal title portfolio during the current mid-range plan period that combines single-player games, which are our strengths and which have a higher predictability of becoming hits due to our proven IP, with live service games that pursue upside while taking on a certain amount of risk upon release. So, this is interesting, man, because it seems like they're just kind of taking some things into consideration in regards to the failures, but they're not really taking themselves into consideration in that regard. It feels like they're kind of just like it's kind of just happenstance that that at least Concord failed while Helldivers 2 was a success. But no, at the end of the day, man, Helldivers 2 is dead because of you guys, and Concord at the end of the day failed because of you guys. I feel like they have the knowledge and they know in that regard what really makes these games hits and what made them fails. But I don't know. I feel like it's just one of those situations where they just don't have the ability to really admit that they at the end of the day they fucked up, man. So who knows? Maybe they'll kind of take this as a learning lesson, like they say, and actually be able to improve on future games and make sure that they actually are able to come out with something that's enjoyable and is a hit. But at this point, knowing the way that a lot of individuals in the gaming industry are at right now at this point, I don't really see that being the case. I feel like more than likely they're going to take all the wrong lessons out of this. So those are my thoughts on that. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. If you guys could like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you guys have been watching this long, I really appreciate it. It means a lot. And yeah, until next time, Harmonic out. Peace.